Imagine taking a whirlwind tour through the roller coaster of human history. We've been hanging around for about 200,000 years, which is no small feat. But guess what? When we peek into the past, we stumble upon these mind-blowingly advanced societies that managed to rock on for up to 10,000 years. Yeah, you heard that right. 10,000 years at the best of high-flying civilization. Now, where do we stand? Some might argue that we're at the zenith of our journey. But hey, here's the twist. Can we boldly declare that we're the ultimate tech wizards of all time? Still, there's no denying that where we are right now is mind-bogglingly high-tech. Remember when hopping on a spaceship and zipping to the stars was a sci-fi dream? Well, we did that. And that magic trick where you tap your device and suddenly someone on the other side of the globe hears you? We nailed that one too. Oh, and those complex gizmos and super smart computers? Yep, we conjured those into reality. So here we are, adventurers of the modern age, treading a path paved with bytes and rockets. Who knows what marvels await as we continue to paint the canvas of history with our technological prowess. Is it a path of prosperity or doom? That is the question. In 1972, MIT predicted the total meltdown of society by 2040. So, in a couple of years, the world as we know it will come to an end?
Not some science fantasy effect from 2001. This electronic display emanating from Australia's largest computer is a picture of the condition, past, present and future of planet Earth.
Too dramatic? But hold on, because this could be our future.
Right back here, less than it was in the year 1900. And at this stage, around about the year 2040, 2050, civilized life as we know it on this planet will cease to exist.
By the time 2040 rolls around, we might be in a bit of a pickle, to say the least. We're talking about economic inequality skyrocketing to whole new levels. The ties that bind our society together fraying at the edges. And our beloved democratic systems feeling like they're running on fumes. In simpler terms, it's not looking too peachy. It's like the world is about to hit some serious turbulence and fasten your seatbelt signs are flashing all over the place. But hey, don't panic just yet. Let's take a look at what's going on. Chapter 1. The Prophecy. Back in 1972, a group of MIT scientists released a study foreseeing the possible downfall of our modern industrial society sometime in the 21st century. While many criticized the study back then, it seems that their predictions have been surprisingly accurate according to recent information. A fresh study, published in the Yale Journal of Industrial Ecology in November 2020, took a look at how things have unfolded since that original 1972 report. The conclusion? If we keep going on as we are, using up resources and exploiting them recklessly, there's a real chance we could see our civilization crumble by around 2040. However, this also means there's a glimmer of hope. If we're able to change our ways, there's a chance we can steer society in a different direction. So, this new study took the predictions the MIT scientists made back in the day and compared them to real-world data about how our economy has grown and how we've been using up resources. They basically wanted to see how close we are to the edge of disaster. The person behind the study, Gaia Harrington, who works at KPMG, got curious about how things were going in relation to these predictions. She mentioned that the book with these predictions was super popular in the 1970s. And by now, we've got decades of actual data to see if the predictions were coming true. Surprisingly, she didn't find many recent efforts to do this kind of comparison, so she decided to dive into it herself. Even though she works at an accounting firm, KPMG, she did this study on her own while she was doing her master's degree at Harvard. Now, just to be clear, when Harrington talks about collapse, she doesn't mean the end of humanity. Instead, she means things could get really bad for our way of life. She explains that economic and industrial growth would slow down and go in reverse, which would mess up how we make food and how well we live. And if we're talking timing, according to her, things could start getting seriously tough around 2040 if we keep doing what we're doing now. Harrington's paper couldn't have come at a more fitting time, especially since the world's economies have recovered after the pandemic. There are clear warnings that this kind of growth isn't sustainable. Just a while ago, Harrington wrote a paper called Beyond Growth. In it, she straightforwardly said, with the world slowing down and the risks of less future growth due to things like climate change, social unrest, and political instability, responsible leaders have to face the idea that growth might not be as easy in the future. It's kind of foolish to keep chasing something that might be impossible. Chapter 2. The First Milestone, 2020. In 1973, a bunch of MIT scientists came up with this computer game, kind of like a simulation, called World 3. They thought it would be a fun little project, but then they got really freaked out when the computer couldn't predict what would happen past the year 2040. According to their simulation, by 2040, humanity would have vanished. Yep, the whole civilization was gone. So these MIT folks got really serious and wrote a book about their study called The Limits of Growth. But guess what? Nobody paid much attention to it. I guess people weren't ready to hear that our fancy society might start falling apart when they're in their 60s. And what was even stranger was that this study had the support of prestigious science organizations and perfectly matched real-world data. But it was just too scary to think about, so we kind of just brushed it aside. This computer model had some milestones along the way. One of them was set for 2020. According to the model, by that time, our comfy way of living would start going downhill. But wait, it gets even scarier.
In the technological field, I think this is going to be increasingly so because of developments next year.
It said we'd start treating technology like some kind of ancient artifact we worship. Back in the day, folks believed in sacred stuff like old animal bones. But in the future, we'd put that kind of trust in things like cars and computers. According to the study, we will eventually land at a place where the need for individual ownership in technology will be greatly reduced. Imagine this. Instead of owning your own car, you just jump into a self-driving Uber or Tesla whenever you needed to go somewhere. That's the direction we'd head in. So when you hear the World Economic Forum saying, you'll own nothing and be happy, they're not trying to be mean or anything. They're just talking about a world where everyone shares technology like a big community. Of course, these smart scientists didn't see things like COVID-19 or the Ukraine war coming, but they did think something big would happen around 2020 that would make us rely on technology even more. So yeah, there might be a big crash of some sort in the future, but don't expect people to start a full-on anti-tech rebellion. That's not likely to happen. Chapter 3. Worst Case Scenario. Since the MIT study was done in the 1970s, they couldn't have guessed all the cool stuff like iPhones, the internet, electric cars, or even high-quality TikTok videos that came later. So they didn't even try to predict those things. Instead, they played around with their computer program by changing some starting conditions and running it many times. Sometimes they assumed technology would keep improving at the same pace. Other times they imagined huge leaps in technology, and in some scenarios, they thought we'd just stop making more stuff. They also looked at things like birth rates, how much we care about the environment, and how much we trade with other countries. The outcome of these experiments varied a lot, but there was one common thread.
Does the time come when governments will simply have to take more control?
Simple nationalization and things like that wouldn't help at all, because we've got to keep an incentive approach. And many of the good aspects of private enterprise are very necessary here, but not in the old exploitative way where the market forces dominated the whole situation.
The path we're on right now seems to lead to a major mess by 2040. A study from 2020 by a sustainability expert named Gaia Harrington, published in the Yale Journal of Industrial Ecology, looked at this. She figured that because we're constantly making more pollution and stuff, we're following a path called business as usual, which is one of the worst ways to go. According to her, this means we'd start seeing things like factories and farms slow down a lot, which would lead to a whole bunch of problems in the 2020s, like people being really unhappy. And just like how rich folks in ancient Rome left the city and created their own kingdoms to be ready for hard times before Rome fell, something similar might happen. Groups might start separating themselves to prepare for whatever's coming. Harrington said something interesting about all this. Trying to keep growing forever isn't doable, even if we have super cool technology.
It went too much against the notion of what progress is at the time. It's just that simple. Growth is not just growth. We have a narrative where we equate it with progress, and that's, I think, we are being told that the only way to lift people out of poverty is through growth. And that's what I always say. And like, well, we can also just do it directly, just lift them out of poverty directly. Why don't we just do that? If that is supposedly the real goal of growth, why don't we just do it directly?
She means no country, not even the whole world together, can just keep growing forever. Our model of endless growth doesn't work on a planet with limited resources. Chapter 4. Climate Change. The world is heating up. Snow and rain are dancing to new patterns and wild climate events. Think intense rainstorms and sizzling temperature records are stealing the spotlight. A lot of these climate shakeups can be traced back to the surge in greenhouse gases hanging out in our atmosphere, all thanks to us humans and our bustling activities. Amidst a series of concerning environmental events like wildfires in the western US and a report indicating the Amazon rainforest might no longer be able to absorb carbon effectively, Harrington's research warned that a collapse could happen around 2040 if things kept going the way they are. Harrington is a rising star in the push to use data analysis to tackle the climate crisis. Her work confirmed the gloomier scenarios outlined in a significant 1972 study from MIT called The Limits to Growth. That study explored possible outcomes when the growth of industry butted heads with limited resources. Given the increase in extreme weather due to the climate crisis and the relation that many of these extreme events are worsened by global warming, the Club of Rome, the organization that published the original MIT study, has revisited that research. Harrington recently emphasized that cutting greenhouse gas emissions is a challenge we all share, saying, looking at a decades-old model in comparison to what's actually happening in the world seemed like a really interesting thing to do from a research standpoint. Chapter 5. The key is sustainability. In this new study, Harrington focused on 2 different situations using a bunch of different factors, like how many people there are, how many babies are born, and how many people pass away, how much stuff we make, how much food we grow, services we offer, resources we use up, pollution we create, how well people are doing, and how much we're messing up the environment. In one situation, they called it business as usual, which basically means things keep going like they are now, and growth slows down while the population drops. In the other one, they named it comprehensive technology, where growth slows down but society doesn't fall apart. In both cases, they found that growth would stop within about 10 years. The study is really clear on this. We can't keep trying to grow forever. According to Harrington, the key is sustainability. She's saying there's a way to create good stuff and make people's lives better without wrecking the planet. And guess what? This can also make money. She points out that there are already examples of this happening. If we put more effort into these kinds of things, we can build a world that's full of possibilities and also doesn't mess up the earth. Interestingly, she thinks the pandemic showed us that we're totally capable of making big changes. But she's urging us to do something now to avoid even bigger problems down the line. So, in a nutshell, we can do this, but we better get moving if we want to avoid paying a much higher price later on. Other possible solutions. There are some practical steps that could really make a difference. 1. We could consider imposing higher taxes on corn, especially for its use as livestock feed. The way we currently produce corn isn't great for the environment, so discouraging its use in animal farming might help. 2. Offering loans to homeowners for upgrading insulation and adopting solar panels could be a game changer. It would make homes more energy efficient and environmentally friendly. 3. How about setting up nuclear power plants in major cities? It could provide a consistent and clean energy source that's less harmful to the environment. 4. It's important not to shift all manufacturing to countries like China just because it's cheaper. We should prioritize environmental responsibility and the prosperity of our own country. 5. Sometimes it takes a crisis to push us toward investing in sustainable technologies. Hopefully, we won't wait until the last moment to make these changes that can save our planet. And about that fascination some people have with wanting everything to collapse, it's not really productive. It's like sympathizing with the very things causing our problems. We need to change our mindset away from excessive consumption and disregard for the environment. It's true that we've seen some less than ideal leadership in handling situations like COVID-19, conflicts, economic crises, and inflation. But maybe we can also hope that better leadership will emerge, especially if we push for the changes we want to see. In a nutshell, it's about taking practical steps to protect our environment and rethinking our behaviors and priorities for a more sustainable future. Chapter 6. The Future. In Harrington's recent article titled Beyond Growth, she said that the model's predictions matched up pretty well with what's actually been happening. It didn't say that everything would collapse, but it did suggest that growth might slow down in the next decade or so. With the world's economy already slowing down and lots of challenges like climate change, social problems, and countries not getting along, some leaders are starting to think that maybe we can't keep growing forever. Going after endless growth might not be the smartest thing. Now, let's clear up a couple of things. Not chasing growth doesn't mean we have to make everything smaller. They call that degrowth. Also, trying to make the economy greener while it keeps growing might not really solve all the problems. Sometimes it just moves pollution around. So here's an idea. Let's be okay with the economy staying the same size sometimes or even getting a bit smaller. We can still make progress and make cool things happen, but we won't be so focused on making more and more money all the time. This guy named Elon Musk did something like this with his company, Tesla. He shared his inventions with others to help the world, and guess what? His company did better than ever. When we start thinking about different ways to run the economy, we open up a whole bunch of new possibilities, like asking yourself, what's really important in life? And then setting our economy's goal to match that. It's not as crazy as it sounds. The Limits to Growth report from 1972 wasn't exactly a crystal ball prediction. It was more like a sophisticated simulation game. It sparked debates among experts about its methods and accuracy, but its core concerns still matter. To dodge any potential societal pitfalls, we need to roll up our sleeves and take action together. Here's the game plan. Let's be smart about how we use stuff like farmland, energy, and raw materials. We should use them in ways that won't leave us high and dry. Our planet's ecosystems, wildlife, and nature are like the ultimate support group. By looking after that, we're looking after ourselves. Imagine if most of our energy came from things like sunlight, wind, and water. It's like switching from junk food to a superfood diet for the planet. Think of our stuff as a friendly cycle. Use, fix, and recycle. It beats the one-way street of using and tossing. Let's put our tech wizardry to good use. Innovations can help us solve problems, from saving water to reducing waste. And lastly, instead of chasing endless growth, we should aim for a balanced economy that puts people's well-being first. Remember, we've got to get going like it's a relay race for the future. The specifics of the prediction might not be spot on, but the message about steering our ship with care is loud and clear. Only time will tell if a collapse is imminent or not. Either way, it is always better to be prepared. So what are the changes you're going to make to ensure that your future and humanity's future are protected? Let's start a conversation in the comments and learn how to tackle this major problem. If you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to BizTory for more thought-provoking videos.